the matrix. Solution.
I'm actually surprised that we've gotten this far on the show and we still have not discussed this topic. It's actually surprised me because I actually had to go back and look because I'm like, I could have swore I did an episode talking about this. Because I made a video the other day, which this is when it really hit me. And because I mean, I kind of went along with it for a while with like the whole Berenstain Bears thing, because that, I don't care what anybody says. I know what I seen. I know what I read. I used to have like every one of those books. Like you guys all remember when we were kids. I'm pretty sure everybody remembers this that's around my age or even younger or older, that we all used to have the book fairs and everybody used to get the little bit of money and they'd get their Ferrari poster or whatever, and get a few different books. The big one I remember I used to read was this was the one that was in between it. So it was like The Plant That Ate Dirty Socks. I don't know if you guys remember that book, but that used to be one of the series I used to love reading. That Goosebumps, and it was the Berenstain Bears. Okay, the Berenstain Bears. It was not the Berenstain Bears, okay? They taught us to sound out words, okay, in school. Enough to know, I know the difference between Steen and Stain, okay? So that was the one that kind of got me onto the whole, Mandela effect. And it wasn't even the whole Mandela thing because, see, I mean, I knew who Nelson Mandela was, but I don't really remember, like how they say, oh, we could swear that he died in prison and he never got out. So I guess, that's where it all comes from. People remember that. So that's what they named it after. But I can't say I remember that whole situation. That one didn't stick out for me. The Berenstain Bears or the Berenstein, see how they're trying to change our minds to think it, but the Berenstain Bears was the one that really got me because, I know for a fact, okay, that's what it was. Now, what's interesting is I'm going to plug this video in. There's a video. Now, they can fake anything with AI nowadays. You know what I mean? Anything can be faked and they make it look real, but it was pretty funny. We'll just say it's a pretty funny, cool video. This guy had the Berenstain Bears books, right? And he was showing that when he was outside of a room, like when he would go in the room, the book would change, like back to the original from Stain to Steen. So I'll just go ahead and roll this clip for you guys real quick. Check this out.
I noticed that the Berenstain had said Berenstain in that room, but I come out here into just the normal other part of the house and it says this. So just so you know I'm not crazy, I'm going to show you as I pass through this doorway what happens, and it's fucking weird. Alright, it happens when it gets in the room. See it? And then back out here. Normal. Yeah. What the fuck? That shit is changing right there. Anyway, shit is changing.
Now, whether that's real or fake, obviously it's probably more than likely fake, but it's kind of interesting. It's funny, in my opinion. It's entertaining. We'll put it that way. But when you look at this whole Mandela effect thing, what hit me the other day, why it made me think about it, because I was like I said, man, I could have swore I did an episode about the Mandela effect, because it's one of the biggest conspiracies out there lately within at least the last 5 years or so, 5 to 6 years. I'd say it really, I mean, maybe a little longer, but I'd say it really started being talked about in like 2019-ish. on, like is when it really, so we'll say about maybe 7 years. But it really started gaining traction in the last couple of years. Now, the one that hit me the other day, I made a reel about it, was it showed Ian McKellen with the people for Lord of the Rings. And they said, oh, they're doing a Lord of the Rings tour, and they're all getting together, Elijah Wood and all them for the tour. Now, I distinctively remember, okay, and I'll put a precursor to this. You guys don't understand. I'm the person, that's why I said is I'm telling you, my family would call me to ask me, oh, who's that actor from so-and-so movie to whatever this and that, and boom, I'd be able to name it. And my family would always laugh about it. They're like, man, you can't get nothing past him. Like, when it comes to movies, stuff like that, he knows, like, he'll know the actor, he'll know what it is. I would be the one sitting around telling stories about when we were young and we were kids, and my brother and sister and everybody who'd be around, they'd be like, man, that's crazy. You remember, I totally forgot about that. So my brain's like a steel trap in that way. Okay, I don't easily forget stuff at all. And when I remember something, I remember it. Like, you can't tell me what I remember. So the ones I'll go through, to be completely clear with, the Berenstein Bears is one of them. I don't care what anybody says. Now, there's ones that kind of border on, I don't know if I really remember it. Maybe that one I got wrong. Like Jiffy peanut butter. Everybody's like, oh, we remember there was a Jiffy peanut butter. But now they're like, no, it was Jif. So they're thinking like people are mixing, Skippy peanut butter with Jif. But I'm not going to lie. I do remember there being a Jiffy. But that one, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to bet the bank on it. I could be wrong about that one. So that one I'll give the whole Mandela Effect, type of thing to. Is maybe I got that one wrong. Now, here's another one that nobody is telling me different about. And that is the cornucopia for the Fruit of the Loom. There was a cornucopia. I don't care what nobody says, because from the t-shirts to the underwear to you name it, I wore all Fruit of the Loom back in the day. There was a cornucopia. And I actually remember the point where they took it away, and I was like, wow, they just like redesigned their logo, and now it's just fruit. So that one people ain't telling me nothing about. So if we look at these ones, so this is where it gets weird, is because, see, when you get a mass amount of people that are all remembering the same thing, there's something weird there, because, somebody can say, oh, well, no, one person remembers it this way, and then another person remembers it that way. But to get a collective consciousness that all remember something so distinctively that they're like, now I'll give you an example of people just being wrong. The one that I know for a fact, okay, because you're not telling me any different about this one, that is wrong, is the Sinbad being the genie in that movie. That movie did not exist, okay? I was a huge Sinbad fan back in the day, okay? From his stand-up, I thought if you guys remember, like the one was so hilarious where he was talking about the, he was hilarious how I thought it was so funny how he could do a comedy show without swearing, and he was one of the few that could not swear in his comedy, and it was still hilarious. But he was talking about like when we used to get whipped when we were kids. He's like, and she would hold the silver belt up to the sky, and it's like people were rolling. So it's like Sinbad I knew very well back in the day, from the movie House Guest with Phil Hartman to you name it, okay? Huge Sinbad fan back in the day. He was not in a genie movie called Shazam or whatever that is. It was called Kazam, okay? Or maybe it was Kazam or Shazam or whatever it was, but it was with Shaq. okay? And it was with that little kid that was in Bronx Tale. That's how I remember it too, because it was that little kid that was from the movie with De Niro and Chaz Palminteri. I'm sure a lot of you guys know Bronx Tale. But that's how I remember that movie. But there was no, even Sinbad, it makes Sinbad realize that, hey, this whole Mandela Effect thing must be crazy because that movie never existed. I never did it. And he actually joked around on a radio show and was like, yeah, you know what? I admit it. I tried to hide it from you guys, but I was smoking crack back then. And I did this movie because I needed the money. And he was screwing with you guys. Like, he came out, and there's even people trying to say, oh, here, I got the case for the movie. The movie never existed, okay? You're talking to somebody, literally, my mom used to joke and say that we paid for the guy from Blockbuster's yacht in late fees. I used to go to the video store, like, I crap you, because I'm trying not to curse here. I'm trying to make this a better year and try not to curse when I don't have to. But I crap you not, okay? I used to go to the movie store because from a young age on, I was about 13, because I went to work young. Like, I dropped out pretty young, and I used to work for my dad. I used to go to work with him because my dad was like, hey, if you're going to drop out and be homeschooled, you gotta go to work. So I was homeschooled back before homeschooling was popular. Like it was weird to be homeschooled back in those days. But I'd finish my homework and do what I had to do at school. I maybe had to do homework like an hour or so a day. And my mom would take me to Blockbuster. And I used to rent movies for like the week. And sometimes, like, anybody that knows me growing up will vouch for me on this. I used to go out of there with a tower of movies, okay? I would watch maybe 4 to 5 movies a day, okay? Like, I was a movie fanatic. All I did was watch movies. So what I'm telling you is this. That movie did not exist. So that's what makes me wonder, how much validity there is to this, because I've heard so many people say that, and I'm like, no, look, that one is not it, because I know for a fact that movie did not exist. I mean, I knew every movie in that freaking video store. You can't name a movie almost, like, unless it's like old, like, even though I've seen a lot of old movies, but unless it's like some old, like, 1920s to even 50s movies, like maybe I haven't seen a bunch of movies back then, but even movies from the 60s, 70s, all the way going up. Yeah, I've seen almost every freaking movie out there. I used to be, like I said, a movie fanatic. That movie never existed, okay? That one is just somebody. Now, maybe like they mixed up Sinbad with like, there was a Sinbad, he was like a pirate warrior guy or something. So maybe the hat, people seen that and got that mixed up somehow or something. I don't know how that happened, but like I said, that definitely was not a movie. But what I can tell you is, like I had said, the most recent one that really blew my mind, and I was like, no, I know what I saw, because people were like, oh no, you're mixing him up with that other guy in Lord of the Rings that died. It wasn't Ian McKellen. No, you don't understand. There's certain movies I do not get into, though. Okay? Like Lord of the Rings, I've seen them, but I really wasn't a huge Lord of the Rings fan, or, Harry Potter stuff. Like, I don't get into the, the wizards and Dungeons and Dragons crap. Like, I really never been into those type of movies. So that's how I knew, because I'm like, dude, I know Ian McKellen from his other work. Like, one movie that pops in my head after I'd seen it, because it was such a crazy movie, is Apt Pupil with Brad Renfro, where Ian McKellen played a Nazi that was hiding out as a regular guy, and Brad Renfro ended up finding out that he was this Nazi that was hiding in his neighborhood back in like the 80s or something. And then he found out that he was a Nazi, used it against him, in order for him to tell him like the secrets of being a Nazi and what it was like. So for the people out there that haven't seen Apt Pupil, check it out. It's based off of a book. I remember I read the book first and then seen the movie. But besides that, always was an Ian McKellen fan, and I knew him as Magneto and all that stuff. I distinctly remember seeing the news report because I was like, oh, wow, Ian McKellen died. So people are like, oh, no, you're mixing him up with that other guy in Lord of the Rings. No, I'm not, because I wasn't into those movies. And so that's how I know it was distinctly him. And then even somebody else said, I remember the news report where it said they're going to have to find, a new Magneto or whatever because he died. So that one really hit me because I was like, wait, that dude died. I distinctly remember it. And just like the other one too, of a person who I know and I heard about, he must have died like 5 times, was Bob Barker. Bob Barker definitely died at least a few times. It's just so weird how I distinctly remember these things. So what it all comes back to is, where does this collective consciousness come from of people all remembering the same thing? Because it's like there's been a thing going on too where it's everybody's having the same dream. It's almost like that movie with Nicolas Cage where everybody was dreaming of him and he just became famous overnight because everybody around the world was dreaming about him. But they're talking about something called Mall World. If you guys haven't heard about this, it's where everybody's dreaming of this big mall that they're in and walking around and stuff. And I've definitely had those dreams recently. I would say like the end of the year, December. I remember having distinctly dreams of being in a mall. And I just thought it was weird. And I didn't think anything of it until, I was screwing around on TikTok looking at videos and I seen a video about it. And everybody's saying, oh, yeah, I've been to Mall World. I've been there. And that kind of made me like, I was like, you know what? I was like, that's what's weird is like, I had that dream too. So it makes you question, where does this collective consciousness come from? Like, where are people all remembering the same thing? It's very fascinating when you think about it, because they're saying, oh, since CERN, the hydrogen collider over in, in Switzerland, okay? They say, like, they found the God particle or whatever, and somehow they're shifting our timelines, and there's all types of theories about why this is happening. But I have my own theory to why this is happening, okay? I personally, believe that I'm going to preface with this. This has been proven that they've already said it, okay? There's been people hired, okay, to go back and add, chemtrails into old Disney cartoons to make it seem normal, because we didn't have chemtrails back then. We all remember looking up at the sky. We used to just lay there in our yard and look up at the sky. We never seen chemtrails back then in the early 90s. We never seen them. I know that for a fact. So what they're doing is they're going back and they're changing history to make us believe that's how it always was when it wasn't. So in my sense, my theory on this is, I think that this is like a real big, psyop in a sense. It's a psychological operation, because what they're doing is, I think they want to see how much they can get us to question our own reality. So essentially, if they just start changing all these things, right, going around and changing them and just kind of observing us to see, what can we get everybody to believe? Do they notice? And if they notice, how many people notice? So it's like, and then if they can get us all to kind of just accept it, then they're like, you know what, we can shift their reality any way we want and get them to believe whatever we want. So I think there's something, if something is going on and stuff is being changed, I believe that there's something way bigger at work, and it's way bigger than just, oh, you know, well, I wouldn't say way bigger. That would be crazy for jumping timelines. But me believing in Christ and believing in the Bible, I don't believe God. You know, that doesn't fit in. Like I said, it all goes back to Scripture for me. And that doesn't fit into Scripture, shifting timelines and time travel and, you know, all alternate dimensions that we can shift over into on a different timelines. It doesn't fit into the Bible for me. So therefore, I can't entertain that. But I would say, like I said, I think they're effectively changing old stuff to see if we question it, to see if we're like, okay, you know, like I said, will we just let it go? Or will we actually, you know, really put up a stink and people are going to be like, no, you're not telling me that it wasn't this way, because it absolutely was this way. I remember that for a fact. So I think it's like like us being little mice in a maze, and they're shifting things up to see how we will divert and move around it or stop and observe it. So I think it's a very big, huge experiment in a sense that they're pulling on the human race to see if they can get us to question our own reality, which is pretty spooky and weird when you think about it. Because it's like, why are they doing that then? Why are they shifting our perception of reality to see how we accept it? Because like I told you, there is certain things that there was some other ones too that I was like, it was the Fruit of the Looms one that definitely jumped out for me. It was that, and it was there's another one. It was the Fruit of the Loom, the Berenstein Bears, and there was another one that's one of the big famous ones. But I was like, yeah, I definitely remember it being that. There's no way it wasn't. And there's newer ones even coming up nowadays, like for that stuff that's not even that old, that's shifting, that people are like sayings in movies are changing even. So it's weird. It's like, I believe they're going back, shifting things around to test our perception of reality and how we react to it. So does the Mandela Effect exist? I think it definitely does, to an extent. And to that extent is the question that, you know, we really need to be asking. And then the biggest question of all, though, is why? And I think there's a lot of answers to that why. And like there's a very interesting test, because human perception is a very interesting thing when you think about it. There's a test I'm going to have to remember, or an experiment. I'm going to have to remember what it was called. But they had an experiment where they put like 12 people in a room, okay? And one person everybody was actors, but one person in that room. They sat them all in a line with chairs. And what happened was they would show them pictures, okay? Like 2 lines. And one line would noticeably be smaller than the other. And they'd say, which line is bigger than the other? Everybody who was actors would pick the smaller line to be the bigger one, okay? And what happens is they go down that line, and the person, okay, even though they perceive that to be wrong, to go along with the herd, they would agree. And I think it was like a super small percentage of people actually spoke out and said, what are you guys talking about? Like, that's clearly smaller than the other line. But for the most part, everybody would agree with something that was noticeably, this experiment, I think, means so much when you think about it. They would agree with the whole herd just not to stand out. So I think that type of experiment really tells you about human nature, that human nature can be shifted, even perception of something that's clearly not real and not correct, just because people don't want to stand out from everybody else. So they'll agree with what everybody else is saying just to kind of not rock the boat. And it's a very interesting experiment. I'm gonna somebody can put it in the comments if you guys know what it is. It's called the Allen something experiment or something, I believe it is. But I'll get the name of it and I'll post it. But you'll have to go watch it. It's a very, very interesting experiment. I think I need to do an episode on some of these experiments, because there's some experiments that I think I'll do that tomorrow. Because what I'll do is I'll bring up there's a couple really mind-blowing experiments that have gone on, and I could almost do a 2-part episode on, you know, experiments in general, from military experiments to civilian experiments. There's some very interesting and wild experiments out there that really just, I mean, human perception, like I said, is a very, very fascinating thing. But see, if we don't really, that's the whole reason why I even call my podcast that. If we don't keep our eyes open, because honestly, we can't even trust our eyes anymore. With AI and everything the way it is, we can't even trust what we see anymore. It's starting to really get spooky, because even what I was talking about the other day, AI is getting so advanced, you can't even believe your own eyes. That's terrifying when you think about it. Because it's like, you know, you always could only believe part of what you hear from the media or whatever, but now you can't even trust what you see. It's pretty freaking weird when you think about it. It really is.